All right, let's dive in. Today, we're talking about the architecture of intimacy, and it's a topic that's, absolutely surrounded by myths. We're going to close a pretty common knowledge gap by just looking at the simple facts: anatomy, research, and communication. So let's get right into it. And this quote, it really just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? There's this silent disconnect that happens, and it's not because of a lack of care, but usually just a lack of the right information. You've got many women worried about, hurting their partner's feelings, and at the same time, many partners who genuinely want to connect, but they're often working from a completely wrong blueprint. So what is this huge misunderstanding? What's the core of the problem? Well, it's a belief that's so deeply baked into our culture that it pretty much goes completely unquestioned, and it shapes how almost everyone approaches intimacy right from the get-go. Okay, let's just break this great misunderstanding down. We're gonna put the myth, the thing we all think is true, right next to the scientific reality. And honestly, the difference between the two is kind of staggering. This one slide right here reframes the entire goal. The common myth is all about performance, right? More intensity, going deeper, lasting longer. But the reality? It tells a completely different story. For a huge majority of women, penetration by itself just isn't the direct route to orgasm. And understanding this single fact, well, it's the key that unlocks everything else we're about to talk about. So you've got to be asking, why? Why does this massive disconnect exist? The answer isn't some complex psychological puzzle, it's anatomical. Seriously, understanding the simple biological why is the aha moment that makes everything else just click into place. And here it is. Most people think of the clitoris as, a tiny external button. But anatomically, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The reality is this much larger, complex internal structure that actually wraps around parts of the vaginal canal. This one picture brilliantly shows why that old myth of just deeper and harder so often completely misses the point. So, once you actually see the anatomy, the whole pathway to pleasure starts to look totally different. It stops being about sheer force, and it becomes about nuance, about precision, finding the right angle, applying consistent pressure, establishing a steady rhythm. It's a much more connected and, frankly, holistic experience. Okay, so that's the theory. We've got the why. Now let's talk about the practice. How does all this knowledge actually translate into action? Well, it's all about shifting from a mindset of performance to one of exploration and connection. So let's look at 3 specific approaches that are really built around this modern understanding of anatomy. And these aren't about being complicated or, acrobatic. They're just about maximizing connection and the right kind of stimulation. First up is a really interesting modification of a classic position. Instead of that typical in and out movement, the focus here is on staying really close and using a gentle grinding or rocking motion. What this does is it creates continuous, steady contact with the external anatomy, which is something that traditional thrusting just can't do. The second approach is a game changer because it's all about control. By putting her in charge of the movement, she can adjust the angle, the depth, and the rhythm in real time to find exactly what works for her body. It completely transforms the experience from a passive one into an active, shared exploration. And third, we have a position that just beautifully merges the physical with the emotional. Sitting face to face naturally encourages slower, more rhythmic movements, and this is crucial. It allows for eye contact and real closeness. It's a powerful reminder that for so many people, that emotional connection is a massive part of physical pleasure. And all of this leads us to a broader and maybe the most important point of this whole thing. The goal isn't intensity just for the sake of intensity. It's about connection. And a huge, huge part of that is finding the right rhythm. It really just boils down to a simple principle. The nervous system responds way better to consistency than it does to chaos. A steady, predictable rhythm can be far more arousing than random speed and force because it allows the body to relax and build sensation, instead of constantly having to adjust to something new. When women describe their best partners, the words that come up aren't strongest or fastest. The word you hear over and over is attentive. An attentive partner is someone who watches, who listens to both verbal and nonverbal cues, and then adjusts. They're focused on their partner's experience, not just their own performance. Which brings us to the final piece of this puzzle. And honestly, it's the simplest yet most powerful tool that we have, actually talking to each other. And this is the classic stalemate so many couples get stuck in. She might not have the right words, or maybe she's worried about bruising his ego, and he's probably afraid to ask because he's worried about hearing an answer that makes him feel like he's failing. This fear on both sides just creates a wall of silence where all these misunderstandings can grow. But here's the thing, breaking that silence doesn't mean you need to have some huge, intimidating conversation. It can start with small, simple, in-the-moment questions like these. Asking these aren't a sign of insecurity. They're a sign of confidence and care. They turn the whole experience into a team effort. So, to wrap this all up, just remember this. It's not about intensity. It is about understanding. It's not about turning intimacy into some kind of endurance sport. It's simply about being present and paying attention. Ultimately, it all comes down to this one thing. The partners who make the biggest impact, the ones we really remember, they're not the ones who perform. They're the ones who listen. So the only question left is, are you?